Okay, so let me just start this video by saying that I am so freaking happy and thinking that this is impossible to repeat again. So, a lot of things conjugated to make this one of the best reading months that I ever had, and I read 22 books, guys. Hello beautiful bookworms, my name is Katarina and welcome to my channel, and today I am going to be doing my August wrap-up. You maybe can see that there's something weird going on behind me and that the shelves are different from what they used to be. That's because I rearranged my shelves. I will maybe have a video coming of me rearranging my shelves, who knows. If that's something that you'd like to see, just tell me in the comments down below. I'm trying to edit that beast of a footage. But if you don't want to see it, I don't know, maybe I'll upload it all the same. God knows. But I am here to talk to you about the N.E.W.Ts readathon, and if you don't know what that is a readathon inspired by Harry Potter, and it's the second year that we are doing it. It was created by G from Book Roast, and it's amazing. I will leave all the information down below. It happened in August, and I was supposed to read 17 books because the career that I chose for that readathon was Alchemist, and in order to be an alchemist you had to pass basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subjects with outstanding and 1 subject with exceed expectations. But I decided that I was going to pass the 6 subjects with outstanding, and then I decided to just go around reading more because why the fuck not? And I have to say, I read 22 books. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. And I think that a lot of things conjugated to make this one of the best reading months that I ever had, and that won't repeat again for sure. But I think it was 3 specific things. First of all of the books that I read were pretty great, with maybe the exception of one-ish, but even that one I really enjoyed. So let's just say all of the readings were very interesting and I wanted to read them, and for that reason I was compelled to read more. Second of all, basically when I was not doing anything extremely important, I was reading, and so I prioritized reading so much that it actually ended up being a great reading month. And third, I had a career to build, and I think that helped a lot. And fourth, it was the magic of manga, for real. I read so many manga this month, and if it wasn't for manga, this wouldn't have happened. So in order to wrap this up correctly, what I'm going to do is tell you what I read for each of the careers. I'm not going to tell you the prompts for the careers. If you want to check them out, I will leave everything as I told you down below. I will leave also my TBR where I talk about the prompts that I had to fulfill. And yeah, let's get into it because this is going to be a big video, so yeah. So we are firstly going to start with the 5 courses that I had to fulfill until outstanding. So I had 3 books to read for all of these 5 prompts, and then we'll go to the prompt where I only had 2 to read, and I actually ended up reading 3 as well. And then we'll go to the things that I read just for fun and that I didn't have to fulfill. So let's get started. So for Ancient Runes, I had 3 prompts, and for Acceptable, I read Yay by Guilherme Petrarca. And this was amazing. First of all, this is really short. It's a graphic novel. It barely has any dialogue whatsoever, and it was a really fast read, also because it was beautiful. The artwork in this is amazing. I will show you some of the things. It's gorgeous. I'm going really fast because I don't want to spoil you, but it's very beautiful. It's about this boy, and he appears to be cursed by the colorless king, which is a character that is blamed for everything that goes wrong in our world, or in this specific world, and he has to make a journey in order to relieve himself of the curse, because the people that are cursed start being bad and feeling bad, and they end up dying and not being very well. I don't want to spoil you, but this is basically a book that tells a story. It's a gigantic metaphor for you, for yourself, and for what gives you courage and what gives you fear. And I really thought it was amazingly drawn, beautifully portrayed, and that the metaphor was right on. And so I would encourage you, if you can get this book, to get it, because it's a graphic novel, it's very short, and it's beautiful. For the second prompt, I read Eman On Volume 1, Memories of Eman On by Shinji Kajio and Kenji Tsuruta, and this is another one that is very well done. It is beautiful in a graphic sort of artistic level. It has a very different art style from what you are used to in manga. It is more sort of dotish, black and white, not as chibi-like. It's gorgeous, beautiful. I adore it. And basically this is the story of this woman. And there's not a lot that I can tell you, but basically it's sort of sci-fi-ish in a way, but also historical and also very profound and deep, and it makes you consider some of the things in life. And I'm sorry, because my neighbors decided that now was a great idea to do construction work. But as I was saying, Eman On is really beautiful on a deep level. I really enjoy this. This is basically about this man in 1967. It's how Japan is looking to the future and how he's looking at the future and how he knows someone that knows a lot about the past and how that can influence our future, and how human history is always based in the past and in the future that constantly repeats itself. And it's just amazing, and I'm not going to tell you how sci-fi comes into this, but it's so beautiful. And even if you don't like this concept, the art style is worth it so much. So you should read this again. Then for the third prompt, I read Fullmetal Alchemist, the Full Metal Edition, Volume 1. This is the collector's edition of Fullmetal Alchemist. And if you don't know, this is one of the best stories ever written in any media. And yes, I said it. It's one of my favorite things in the whole world. I've watched the animation, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. I love it. And now I'm reading this new collection edition, and it's just... so gorgeous. But to not waste any time, this is basically the story of these two brothers. They try to resurrect their mother from the dead using alchemy, which I'm going for the alchemist path. You see what I did there? You see what I did there? But it goes terribly wrong, and one brother loses his arm and his leg, and the other one has his soul attached to a piece of armor because he loses all of his body. And so basically, they enter into the military with their alchemist abilities to actually try and find the Philosopher's Stone and get their bodies back. And this is more than just an adventure sort of fantasy thing. This is about religion. This is about truth. This is about philosophy. This is about love, caring, family. It's about everything. Politics. It's about race differences. It's so great. It's about the consequences to all of your actions. It's amazing. And it has so many interpretations, and I freaking love this. And it was so good to see some of the stuff that I knew from the animation portrayed in this beautiful art style. It's not as deeply beautiful and engrossing as Yay or Eman On, which I read before, but it's a normal style of manga, and for me, manga is always beautiful. So, I mean, I guess you can say it's beautiful as well. So after Ancient Runes, we have Arithmancy, and for that I had to read also 3 books. So the first book that I read was Children of the Whales, Volume 10 by Abi Umeda. You've seen me talk about this a lot. It's about this group of people that go and live into a sand island that goes around in the sea, and then one day they are invaded and killed because they are actually exiled people. Some of them have power, some of them have not. This is political, this is racial, this is about emotions and what they mean to a life in society, and how you can live in society with your emotions, but sometimes you cannot. And it's so beautiful. It's very Ghiblish-like, as I have said loads of time. There's an animation going on Netflix right now. I haven't seen it, but I have read all of the volumes that are out, and I absolutely love this. So if you haven't picked this up, just do it. Do it. Just do it. I am getting so aggressive throughout this. I feel like it's because I have a lot of books to still show you. I don't know. We will proceed. Then after that, I read for the first time in Frozen is coming in Christmas, everyone, but yeah. I read, as I was saying, for the first time in Always, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is my copy. It's the smallest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life, but it was genius because I read this everywhere and I could get it with me. It was great, and I love this. This, of course, you know, it's about Victor Frankenstein, the guy that decided to give life to a bunch of pieces of corpses all together and then created a monster that he couldn't even look upon and abandoned him because fuck you, that's why. Let's just create something with conscience and emotions and then abandon it without explaining it why it's alive and what it's doing here, without giving it a name. Just calling it a monster. And then forcing everything that fucking happened in this book. And although I understand Victor's thing, because I am an investigator right now and I understand the power of science and how if you know something, you want to try it out and put it to a test and create, you should know there's ethic stuff and ethical reasons for not doing stuff. And I get so mad at Victor because he left the monster by itself and the monster could have been so happy and there could have been... things could have worked out great if it wasn't for him leaving him alone. This is so gothic, so Victorian, so dark and amazing. Of course, it's filled with people having fits of fever for no fucking reason because apparently when you lived in Victorian sort of time periods, every time that you did something reproachable or something that you shouldn't have done or something, you had a fit of fever and you got into bed for like a week and then you were fine, but very weak from your mind. You know what I mean? But it's so cool. I really love Frankenstein and I'm glad that I gave it a shot. I'm glad that I have it. It's not part of my collection and I absolutely love it. After Frankenstein, I read 5 centimeters per second. This is a story by Makoto Shinkai and was adapted into manga by Yukiko Seikei. And this already has a movie out, but I haven't seen it yet, which was great because I could read the story and feel the story for the first time. So this is basically about these two children, let's just go with it. They met because the girl got transferred to his school and he had just transferred, so they didn't have a lot of friends, and they struck up a friendship, and it's about the way they fall in love, and it's their first love because they're very small, but then she has to transfer schools again for a place that is very, very far away, and you have to change many, many trains to get there, and they sort of get alone, but they still send letters to each other, but over time, this sort of gets separated, and that's what this is about. It's about how we bond together with people, but how we get separated from people as well. And it's just so beautiful. I actually cried reading this because I don't want to spoil you, but there's this part where I was just like, why the fuck do people always have to be separated, and why? And it's beautiful. And 5 centimeters per second is a title that refers to the time that it takes for a cherry blossom petal to actually fall from the tree into the ground. So it falls 5 centimeters per second. And that shit is just so interesting. I never thought, I was like, why is this called like this? And they were talking about it and I was like, seriously, it's about cherry blossoms? And then I thought about it and it's like, that's how long it takes for you to get separated from someone. You start slowly, and then when you understand that you are separated from someone, it's already a lot, but it's only 5 centimeters per second. And then it struck me, and I was like, that's the metaphor, bitch! And it was amazing. I really want to see the movie. Makoto Shinkai hasn't disappointed me once. I have read other of his works, and I've loved them. It's always about the separation and the being together and the people, and I really love that. I really do. Then the next course that I had to do was herbology, and for the first one I read Swamp Thing Volume 1 by Alan Moore and by a bunch of people. Stephen Bissett and John Toddleben. Whatever. So if you don't know Alan Moore, first of all, where have you been? He's the creator of Watchmen, V for Vendetta, and other stuff. He's great. His writing is amazing. But this was the only thing that I read this month that I wasn't really into it for this specific reason. Because this is him taking the Swamp Thing story, which was from another author, and actually giving its view on the thing. But the beginning of this is like the end chapter, or the chapter that he used to end the other story, and then he started doing his own. So because I hadn't read the other story, I was like, okay, who the fuck are these people? What are we doing here? Why is this good? And the writing was spectacular, and I loved it. And this is basically about this dude. You know how superheroes are born, it's always a tragedy, okay? And villains as well. So basically this dude, something happened in his laboratory, for what I gathered. And basically there was a chemical reaction with some plants, and he turned into a swamp monster. And then you figure out that he actually isn't, he's just a plant. It is a plant animated by a conscience. But he's not a man, he's not nothing, he's just a plant. It's very weird, it's very sci-fi-ish. I guess every superhero movie is sort of sci-fi-ish in a way. For me it was weird, but I can still appreciate the fact that Alan Moore gives us some of the best lines ever, because he is amazing at writing. So I have no criticism there, but for me it was very hard not knowing the backstory of the thing to get into the story. That was just my only problem with it. The rest of it was pretty good. The next book that I read for Herbology was One Dark Throne by Kendara Blake. And I am still loving the Three Dark Crowns series, so now the One Dark Throne thing. And I cannot wait to read the other two, because, oh my god, this is getting... Ooh! The ending of this was very like, but how though? And it was very strange. I was like, how are they... How will the plot proceed? It was very interesting. I still love all of the three queens, and I cannot say who's my favorite, but I love what's going on with Katharina. Catherine? Cat. Okay. First of all, because she shares a name with me. So, you know, I see myself. No, I don't. Okay. But yeah. Second of all, I really love Arsenault, if that's how you call her, and I really love Mirabella. Is that her name? Fucking hell, what's her name? Mirabella, yeah, sorry. I really love them all, and they're my babies, I love them all. Are they going to kill each other? Because if they are, I'm going to be so sad, because I love them all. And I can't spoil this because this is the second book in the Three Dark Crowns series, but it's basically this island where triplets are born, and when they reach a certain age, they have to kill each other, and the one surviving is the one that's going to rule the land. And this is a thing, okay? So they cannot refuse, and some of them don't want to refuse. And this is so fucking great. Like, this has been one of the best surprises for me. I thought the writing was going to be lazy. I thought I was not going to enjoy it. And of course, it's not a literary classic. Sorry. But it's great. I love it, and I will keep on reading. I enjoy it. It's my guilty pleasure. Come at me. Then I read The Promise Neverland Volume 9 by Pasuka Demisu and Kayu Shirai, and I am really enjoying where this is going right now. As I told you, this is sort of a dystopian world where children are bred to be fed to demons, and some of the children decide to escape. And this is a mind-blowing chess game. There was a part where I wasn't very interested where this was going, but now I am full on in the ride again and loving the characters so much. I love Emma, which is our little girl with the antenna. She's so cute. And I really want the best for all of these children. I mean, they don't deserve this. It's a little bit creepy, but it's not the most horrific sort of thing. There's not a lot of gore, but it's still a little bit in the in-between. So if you want to start sort of horror manga, I suggest to start with this one, because it's very close to dystopic fantasy sort of thing, and it's not very gory, but still it has children abuse, obviously. So if you don't want to see that, maybe don't read it. Then I had to read for potions Full Metal Alchemist Volume 2, and after that I read Full Metal Alchemist Volume 3. So I am not going to talk a lot about this because I've already told you what these are. I'm just going to tell you that I had no idea that this one ended, or rather had one of the parts that hurted my soul so much when I watched the animation, and I cried reading a manga. Shame. And after that, to finish Potions, I read The Crow by James O. Barr. This is the special edition graphic novel, and Potions for me was very fucking emotional. First Fullmetal Alchemist and then The Crow. If you don't know, how don't you know? But basically The Crow, it's a vengeance tale about this man called Eric. He and his fiancée, let's just say, because they were never married, but he and his fiancée were one day in a car, and basically the car stopped in a place and he was trying to make it work again, and they were approached by a group of bros that did drugs and that weren't very nice, and those bros decided to kill him at gunpoint and then proceed to rape and kill his fiancée. He's brought back by a crow, which I feel like it might have something to do with Norse mythology and Odin and crows and whatever. And he decides to get his vengeance and to avenge the people that killed his fiancée because she couldn't get back and she was in a pretty horrifying state. This is basically James O. Barr work based, as I learned, on something that actually happened to him. Not like as horrifying as this, but there was someone very important in his life that one day, because of him, so he says, because when you read the story, you know it has nothing to do with him and it was an accident, but he blamed himself. That special person died in a car accident and he blamed himself forever. And so he wrote this as a way, as a let out, as an escape, as a way to put all of his grief and all of his anger and his guilt into this. And then when they got this to be a movie, his friend Brandon Lee, he was doing the movie and he died as well. So you can see that this bro just thought to himself, if I've never written this shit, he wouldn't have died. Guilt again. So this is sort of a cursed work, and I pity him so much because the sadness, the anger, and the despair that you feel when you are reading this is so real. And I loved it so much, but not in the way like, oh, this is great, this dude is despaired, this is amazing, feed me with despair. No, it was like, fucking God, I am so sorry for you. And just, I'm even crying again, I'm getting emotional again, because this was so strong. And the artwork is just, this is fucking amazing. Amazing. Like, you cannot, no one can do something like this with so many emotion. This was, if you haven't picked this up, if you haven't watched the movie, if you haven't read this, please do yourself a favor. I mean it. This is a favor that you're doing to yourself. Read this. This was one of the highest points of this readathon for me. I cried my eyes out, but I loved every second of it. Then I had my transfiguration exams, and for the first one I read Lost Boy by Christina Henry. So this is a sort of gory horror retelling of Peter Pan, and I am not going to tell you who's the main narrator. I hope I never told you, because it's really awesome to go into the story without knowing. I sadly knew, of course, what it was. But I'm just going to read you the back. And if you don't want to read this after I read the back, you will never want to read it. So it says, there is one version of my story that everyone knows, and then there's the truth. Once I loved a boy called Peter Pan. Peter brought me to the island because there were no rules and no grown-ups to make his mind. He brought boys from the other place to join in the fun, but Peter's idea of fun is sharper than a pirate's sword. He wants always to be that shining sun that we all revolve around. He'll do anything to be that sun. Peter promised we would all be young and happy forever. Peter will say I'm a villain, that I wronged him, that I never was his friend. Peter lies. And if you know something about me, or if you don't know this. I love it when Peter Pan is portrayed as the bad guy. And I love Peter Pan so much, but I feel like someone that is always a children and never grows up, he will be spoiled a little. And he was the king of the island, so of course he would want everyone to do what he said. Children are like that. Even myself, when I was a child, I loved people would play the way that I wanted them to play. And if they weren't playing the way that I wanted, it will be like, why aren't you? And of course, my parents explained to me that I couldn't have everything that I wanted, but he doesn't have parents. That's the point. So nobody explains to this little boy why he can't have everything that he wants. And with that comes a little meanness. And I love it when he's portrayed as the villain. I know that in the original story he wasn't, but in the original story of Peter Pan, he was not always a nice child. And that's what I love about that. So this is amazing. I loved it. It talks about the fact of growing up and how terrifying it can be, but also how it's good for you and how you grow up and how that makes you who you are. And I really enjoy this. Oh my god, this is getting so big. Okay, so the next one that I read for Transfiguration was Tokyo Ghoul Volume 10 by Sui Hishida. Actually, Tokyo Ghoul Re, the sequel to Tokyo Ghoul. Sorry about that. So I'm not going to talk a lot about this. It's a boy, it's half a ghoul, he's half human. There's political, there's hunting, there's wars, there's blood, viscera, gore, love, friendship, and a lot of stuff. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. Don't even try to. And don't watch the animation, please. Do yourself a favor. I don't need to tell that this was great, because Tokyo Ghoul is always great for me. Then I read one of the most fucked up things that I've ever read, and not because it has gore, but because it's very fucked up, and that is Ayako. And Ayako is by Osamu Tezuka, and Tezuka is one of the creators, the grandfather of manga. So for me to read this was like a love letter to the art of manga. The art of this is beautiful. It's ancient manga art in its finest. The story of this was so disturbing. This is basically about Japan after the Second World War. And this covers like almost a quarter of a century. And basically is the story of a family which Ayako is a part of, and Ayako is our main character, but really our main character is the entirety of the family. And through the family, we see how Japan was completely fucked up after the Second World War, how there were spies, how people were being relieved of their lands because they were making, well, whatever, because America was there and fucking things up, and how they didn't react well to this, how parents disowned children because they had been prisoners of war instead of dying for their country. It was very strange. And this involves incest, child abuse, your sister being your mother, which is always great, espionage, noir sort of things, mafia, crimes, people dying, accidents, gore, killing people. It's so fucked up. And the end of this, I was like, the fuck, you're going to finish like that? But I think that this is an accurate representation of a country that was trying to get back together and to begin and to make the best with what they had, but clinging to what they were, not wanting to evolve, but then evolving, but then coming back. It's an accurate portrayal of all of the shitty things that war and famine and money and honor and everything, what happens when you get through it. And it was amazing. It's a fuck of a book. It's like 700 pages, but it's great. I really enjoyed it, and I'm really happy that I read it. It is historical fiction. That's that. There's nothing else to it. But it's sort of metaphorical because through a family, you see a country. And you cannot ask anything else than that, because that is so interesting to see how different characters reacted to different things and how they reacted to the same things as well. It was just, I loved it. And if you like manga, granted, this is not for everyone, but if you like manga, if you like Japan and you want to know a lot more of its story, if you don't mind following the same characters over and over again through a slow-paced book, which is what this is, you will like this. This was amazing. I will show you some of the art. It's really old, sort of cartoonish Japanese art, and I love it so much. I'm really happy that I read this, although it was very fucked up, but I really enjoyed it. Then for astronomy, I only had 2 books to read for acceptable and exceed expectations, but I read 3 because why the fuck not? I'm an overachiever. So the first one that I read was The House with the Chicken Legs by Sophie Anderson, and this is a beautiful middle grade story about this girl, and she is destined to be a Yaga. She is the granddaughter of Baba Yaga, and she's supposed to lead the dead people into the other world. But the fact is that she only wants to make live friends and live a normal, alive girl life. So is she going to fulfill her destiny, or is she just going to take destiny into her hands and make whatever she wants? And this is such a beautiful story about family, growing up, and what it means to be fated to do something and what it actually means to you and what you want to do about it. And if you're going to let a word, fate, decide what you're going to do, or if you're going to make the best of it. And our protagonist, she's just so plunky, she's just so amazing, and I cried in this as well because she has a grandmother and it reminds me of my relationships with my grandparents. So if you have grandparents, if you love middle grade stories, this is a great fantasy book for you. This is beautiful, and I am so happy that I actually picked this up. This is just so great. Then I read a bunch of Gothic comics by Serena Valentino to fulfill just one prompt, because I'm crazy. I read prompts 1 to 22 of Nightmares and Fairy Tales by Serena Valentino and a bunch of other artists. And look at this. This is so creepy Gothic-like thingy. Look at it! It's just so cute! I cannot. Look at this. Look at this. So basically, this is a series that was discontinued after all of these. And this is about this little doll. This little doll is called Annabelle. Rings any bells to you, horror fans? But as I was saying, this doll is called Annabelle, and it's about her telling the story of all of the people that owned her and that ended up dead or in a worse fate than death, just because they owned her and she didn't do anything else. She just brought them bad luck, sadly. And it's just so gothic and so amazing, and it has a lot of emotions. In the end of the comics, Serena Valentino was actually doing sort of retellings of fairy tales like The Little Mermaid, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, and it's just so fun. And in the middle, she just did Victorian Gothic things with vampires and other stuff, and it was just so amazing. I really enjoyed it. I believe that these you can't get, I don't know, but maybe a volume or something? I'm not sure, but if you can get your hands on this and you like Gothic stories, this will be one of the best things that you read. But be careful, because there's a lot of blood, gore, monsters, children abuse, everything that you can think of, but not directly. It's there, it's trigger warning, but it's not flapped out on the page. It's very fun. It looks like they're telling you bedtime stories for children, but horrifying. And it's just so amazing. I really enjoyed it. So the last thing that I read for astronomy, to be a fucking overachiever, was Happiness Volume 9. This one I read because it was supposed to be something with stars on the cover, and this has stars on the cover. It is a starry night, as you can see. This is about vampires, it's about growing up, it's about living with the scars of your life, it's about having friends, and it's about puberty and doing shitty things and how your life comes after you and your decisions are important. And it's just this is just so beautiful. You have to read this in order to know this is beautiful, but it's in volume 9 and I'm still loving it, and there's just a lot of twists and turns, and this is by Shuzo Oshimi, and one of the best art styles in manga. I mean, fucking look at this. Fucking look at this. Trigger warnings for blood and gore. Sorry about that page. Sorry. I'm gonna go now. So now what happened was I had finished all of my prompts, but I still had 4 days left, and I had 4 mangas that I had to read in order to finish up the series that I was following. I still have mangas that I haven't read, but they are not in any series, so it's okay if I don't read them for now. But I wanted to finish up all of these 4. So what I decided to do was read 4 prompts of the N.E.W.Ts that actually had something to read. So basically, for divination, I had to read something with a white book or something like that. So I read Tokyo Ghoul Volume 11 because it's a white cover, it's a white book. I don't need to explain that to you. Still very much enjoy this volume, more than the last one actually, and I think that I'm enjoying them all, to be honest. Then for charms, to have an acceptable, so I got an acceptable in divination, and then for charms to get an acceptable, I had to read a book with a gorgeous cover, and I read Children of the Whales Volume 11, because if you say to me that this is not a gorgeous cover, you're wrong, and I'll fight you. Then for exceeded expectations in charms, I had to read a comic, graphic novel, or manga, and for that one I chose The Promise Neverland Volume 10, because it's a manga. And to get a no in charms, it was Spongify read a paperback, and for that I read a paperback manga, Made in Abyss by Akihito Tsukushi. And this, I already talked about this, it's basically about this civilization that lives near an abyss, and if you go down the abyss, you can never come back because your body would not withstand the coming up. And it's basically about this little girl that goes into the abyss looking for her mother, knowing perfectly well that she can never survive the coming up, so she'll never see her friends again and she will just die, possibly. And it's just so beautiful. I love it, and I already cried, so don't read these if you don't want to cry. There's a lot of children abuse, there's a lot of trigger warnings for everything, and it's on page. So if you can't withstand it, don't get into this. So this is all that I've read for August, and I am so sorry about the length of this video. I will not take any more of your time. Thank you so much if you would stood with me until the end, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you like it, leave a like or subscribe, and tell me down below if you finished your career paths for the N.E.W.Ts, if you participated, if you haven't, if you read any of these books, or if you want to. And that's going to be all for today, so happy readings to you all. Bye!